On November 11th, 2016, the Black Student Task Force gathered in the amphitheater to address issues related to black students at the University of Oregon. They announced a list of 12 demands that would create a welcoming and supportive educational environment for black students. Some of these demands included having the University of Oregon to commit to hiring an African American advisor and retention specialist and black faculty across all academic disciplines, especially in major UO departments such as architecture, business, education, math, and science. This demand was satisfied in part as there was an increase of 0.2% in black staff and faculty in 2018. However, that number decreased by 0.2% as of 2019. The difficulty lies in retaining black staff and faculty so they might assist in encouraging black students to keep pursuing their chosen fields of study because, like all other students, black students belong in whatever space they desire to be. The University of Oregon student population is 2.5% black. Black staff at the University of Oregon account for 2.2%, and black professors make up 2% of the faculty. Today, black students are not only seeing a lack of themselves reflected in the student body, but also within their majors. The lack of black staff and faculty directly affects black students who are hoping to one day pursue a career in their chosen field.
My name is Ed Madison. I am an associate professor at the School of Journalism and Communication at University of Oregon. I grew up in Washington, D.C. in the 70s and 80s at a time when Washington, D.C. was predominantly African American. So I did not have the experience of being a minority in high school. I really didn't experience this sense of difference, if you will, until I reached college. My first night in the dorm in college, one of my roommates said to me, "What's the ghetto like?" And I said, "I don't know. I roll up my windows and drive fast like you do probably when you go through there, you know." Now, I don't mean that to be dismissive of folks that are in situations that are unfortunate, but the presumption that because I was brown-skinned, that I should be from the ghetto was what a lot of people see on TV, and they think that's what the black experience is, you know. It's not easy, but it can require sort of adding additional armor to allow yourself not to be emotionally, affected by that stuff. It doesn't excuse it, but if you allow yourself to be affected by it, then who's won? My mom was a teacher, my dad was a journalist, and the importance of education was always very much stressed in my household. So I think actually when I was a college student at Emerson, I had a professor that really made an impression on me. His name was Dan Lounsbury. And I thought to myself, I could do that one day. When you have those kinds of role models, when you see that level of success of people who look like you, it propels you to see yourself in that way as well, So as I started to realize that you go out into the world, you kind of leave your cocoon, you go out into the world and you realize that, that's not the case for so many other people, I realized that that I had a responsibility, to give back in a sense. I mean, that sounds cliche to say in a sense, but I just realized that there was something that I had been privileged to experience that could benefit so many other young people. So I just received tenure and promotion to associate professor, and to my knowledge, I'm the only, or the first, if you will, African American to do that in the School of Journalism and Communication. Shouldn't have taken that long, for that to happen. But Oregon has some troubling history, that it acknowledges and that most of the people who live here are not proud of. There was a time in the 1840s where they had, lash laws where you could be whipped if you looked like me, and you were not allowed to be in this state after dark. those laws, while they weren't strictly enforced, it took a long time for them to come off the books. And so what I've found actually, because I've lived here longer than I've worked here, I've lived here almost 15 years now. So what I find is actually, to a fault, people actually kind of go out of their way to make you feel comfortable. You know, I was in a leadership group, and there was like a dozen of us, people from all over Oregon, were sitting around, and one of the guys said, something, 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 colored people. And he meant this, and I said, oh, you mean, I think you meant people of color. Now, that's a very subtle, you know, that's got some racial and history to it, you know, but you don't say one, and you can say the other, but if you don't live in a social setting or a context where you know all of that, you don't want to say anything. People like to come and feel welcomed and to see other people who look like them. And so one of the problems we've had at this university is attracting people, but then keeping them, you know, in terms of faculty from, you know, diverse backgrounds. We all have a past, and as far as I know, like, none of us chose what city, what family, what socioeconomic setting we were going to be born into, what date and time. You know, 200 years earlier, you know, who knows what it'll be 200 years later from now. I think that the only place and time that you can make an impact is right now, right? So that's what I focus on. What can I do now? If you can communicate effectively, you can do anything.
My name is Kristen Clayton, and my major is nonprofit management with a certificate in arts management. Before I came to the University of Oregon, I did not consider all the aspects of my identity. When I came here, though, it was clear that my identity revolved around my race and around being a Black woman in academia or getting like a graduate degree, and how that didn't technically reflect back on me, but how it was perceived by others, by how it was perceived by my professors or other people in the department. It kind of became like my identity was synonymous with my race versus my intelligence. I've kind of always been the only Black student in a lot of my classes. Like, from elementary school on, I was the first African American at my elementary school. I was the only one in a lot of my middle school classes, and the joke at my high school was, if you're Black, it's like a speck of dirt in an avalanche. It is very difficult when you realize that you are the only voice oftentimes speaking for your race or ethnicity, and it's also very difficult when you realize that in these classrooms where you're the only Black student, if you hadn't enrolled, they would still be talking about issues that affect the Black community without having direct kind of representation from people who are educated from that community. So it's kind of frightening at the end of the day when you realize, if I didn't enroll in this class, not only would there not be a visual representation of this community that they're kind of abstractly studying, but there wouldn't be someone to say, hey, that's kind of not what it's like, or you're portraying people of color as one-dimensional when not all communities of people of color behave in XYZ way. So I'm oftentimes the only Black person in the vicinity, which I don't notice until someone points it out, or until words like diversity, equity, and inclusion are referenced with my name. And then I realize, oh, that means I'm the only Black person here, and you know, I've checked the box for whatever setting I'm in for diversity, which is disheartening because I'm more than just a checked box. I haven't had one Black professor ever. And I think the only reason that I am even in academia is because my mother's an educator who has her master's degree. She's a teacher. She teaches the 5th grade. And my grandmother was also an educator. So if I didn't have like that strong Black female core that was inspiring me to pursue higher degrees, I don't think I would even be here. And if students don't have that, then they are really kind of shooting arrows in the dark at where they want to be, how they can get there, and how that can benefit their future generations. I think it is disheartening because you can't picture yourself in the positions that you are perhaps getting in, you know, thousands of dollars worth of debt and spending your greater younger years pursuing. So what kind of is there for you? Either you have to have that like determination that you're going to be a pioneer and kind of strive through like these difficulties and create sort of representation that you wish was there, or you kind of have to focus your energy in a venue where you do see that representation and you do feel inspired. I think it has been discouraging, and I know that it has been a constant hindrance in the back of my mind, saying like, if I don't create this opportunity for myself, then there's no one that's going to be there as a representation for me. Because representation is so important, especially in academia, because why are we all here besides to strive for our dreams? In terms of attracting and kind of keeping Black students or Black professors or students of color or professors of color, I think it has a lot to deal with making them not feel like they're being a checked box, because oftentimes their perspective isn't valued, but their aesthetic appearance is. You know, when you have a photograph of a cohort or you have a photograph of like faculty and there's diversity there, then that kind of reflects greatly on the university and on the school itself. But also the community isn't built to sustain like a beautiful community of color. It's kind of sustained to, or built to sustain, a homogenous white culture. So I think it's about attracting people not based upon their race, but upon their intelligence and their experience, and then creating a community for them, which I think if they really want to transition the university, which is at the heart of the community, they need to kind of collaborate with the city in terms of what they can do to make Eugene and Springfield more welcoming to Black people, to people of color. Because I know I have to drive 2 hours to Beaverton if I want to get my hair done by a certain someone. And that makes it difficult for me to see myself staying here beyond my 2 years in graduate school. But I also have to travel near or far, get a cookbook and reference recipes from my mother and grandmother if I want food that's important to my culture. So it's not just about creating a job for someone, it's about creating a home. And I think that's what the university and the city area are missing, is you're not creating homes, you're creating kind of filled in spaces where you just want to sub in and out people of color. And I don't know, a year, 2 years, then you just get another one without realizing, hey, we're trying to create homes for these people and not just, you know, the experience of going to a university with a diverse faculty.
My name's Charles Suddeth III. I'm a general social science major and I play football. I do not think that there's enough Black faculty at the U of O, just due to myself only having one Black professor, and it was in African American Studies. And that was Dr. Curtis, who's also an amazing professor. And that just made me realize that Black people can be professors, because that was the first time, or the second time I would say, in my life that I've ever had a Black teacher in general. So it just showed me that it can be done and that it should be done. It made it a lot easier to go to office hours and things like that and connect with them, which is not something that I had done a whole lot. I mean, I would do it, but I was more willing to do it. And it seemed like he was more willing to change his office hours for me because of my football schedule. I wasn't always able to make his scheduled hours, but you know, he would make time and make sure that he talked to me and we would connect on a different level that was more than just school. At the U of O, I've been the only Black student in my class plenty of times. Even, I would say, in big lectures early when I was taking gen ed classes, I would be the only Black student in there, and it was a little weird, because you would look around and be like, oh, I'm the only Black one in here. So, if I were to show up late or something like that, that was already, real bad, and they would be like, oh, not typical, but you know what they were thinking. The pressure of being a Black student athlete has made me pretty much perform better than I would have otherwise, because I'm like, oh, there's no time for mistakes or anything like that, because I have to be on my game. I have to be not perfect, but the best that I can be day in, day out, because they're already stereotyping me or judging me for what they think is gonna happen. But I have to prove to them, or not prove to them, but just show them that that's not the way it is. And, Black student athletes also, care about their education or things like that. So I feel like the U of O, in order for them to gain Black students and keep Black students here, you have to bring things here that Black students like. And I know Eugene is predominantly white, and that's what shows on campus, but it's like, if you want to keep Black people here, bring things here that they like, or what they're used to, because if they're not used to it, they're going to be uncomfortable. And if you want to make us comfortable, bring what we're used to, because sports isn't going to keep us here, you know, because not every black student does sports.
My name is Curtis Austin, and I teach in the Department of History, where I'm a specialist in African American history, and I teach courses in the history of the civil rights and black power movements and the black freedom struggle in general. Growing up black and poor in Mississippi, I was never taught about the black freedom struggle, never heard about it. You know, my mom and dad, aunt, uncles, coaches, teachers, you know, nobody ever mentioned the civil rights movement. Now, it's true that, you know, back in those days, there was Black History Month then was Black History Day. So every year there'd be a day where a teacher might mention Rosa Parks or George Washington Carver or some king in Africa I'd never heard of. But it was like in homeroom, and then that was it. So I got to college and discovered that there was a whole world of information that would help me understand how we came to be, how black people came to be in this country. And having lived in one of the areas where the movement really had some major victories was upsetting to me, because it's like, how could you not tell me that? So I was upset with my teachers, I was upset with my parents, and with everybody who must have known because they were there, and they didn't share that with me. And so when I found that out in an American history course I was taking from Dr. Neil McMillan, I just, you know, just kept raising my hand, interrupting his lecture. And he finally said, why don't you write your term paper on it? Like, I'd like to finish my lecture. The more I found out about the civil rights and black power struggle, the more I wanted to know. And so I've been pursuing that ever since. And I think it landed me in this job. Everything I learned about black history, I learned from white Southern professors. And being a black person who grew up in the South, being male, having a darker skin, gives one a particular experience in the United States. And I think bringing the ups and downs, ins and outs of that experience to my research and to my teaching gives students something that perhaps they might not get from a person who has a different background. What comes to mind when I'm told that there is a 2.5% black student body at the U of O is why. The question of why. How could this possibly be? Oregon is a great state. It's beautiful, has wonderful people. What is the difficulty in attracting a more diverse student body? And so it makes me sad that other people don't get the opportunity to enjoy what I enjoy every day, walking around campus and teaching in the classrooms and going to the library. It makes me want to do something about it. So I would say creating more opportunities for people to think, wow, that might be a place I can thrive. And one of the ways you do that is to go out and talk to people and share with them the beauty of the University of Oregon experience. And for younger people, don't worry about it. When you get here, everything is going to be taken care of. This scholarship is going to do that. This group of people are going to help you do this, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I would encourage black students to persevere. They came here for a reason, and that is to get an education, not just a degree, but an education. And I would encourage them to hold on. I would encourage them to learn, if they don't already, learn about their own history and their heritage. And what they'll find is that the black experience in this country has been extremely challenging, from the slave trade to slavery itself, to 100 years of Jim Crow and segregation, and now, you know, hyper incarceration or mass incarceration is what we're calling it. There have been so many challenges and roadblocks that black people have had to face, but when we look at our history, we can see that we've overcome all of them. And it is their responsibility to carry on that legacy. So yes, it's going to be difficult. Yes, there will be days when you want to quit, but those are not very good reasons to stop. If you look at your history will tell you if you keep going, you will succeed. It doesn't get that much easier, you know, as time unfolds, but every ounce of struggle you put into it is going to be worth it. I'm telling you, I grew up in a space the size of that corner over there with 7 people. There were 2 rooms, no running water. You know, we had electricity, but we were so poor, sometimes we couldn't pay the bill. So sometimes the power was not on. And that was a difficult experience. We were hungry a lot, you know, didn't have a lot of clothes. I wore the same clothes to school year in and year out. You know, of course, when I grew, I got the hand-me-downs from my cousins and older siblings. But that experience is never going to happen to me again because I got a good education. But just knowing all the stuff that there is to know has made my life so much better. And I don't think about it until I have to when situations like this come up. It's like not an issue anymore. It's not an issue anymore because somebody took the time to provide me with a good education. And I think the University of Oregon can do that for other students.
My name is Eden Hardy and I am a biochemistry major. I saw one of my older brothers pursuing that major and he wanted to be a veterinarian. And knowing that I wanted to pursue medicine as well, it kind of showed me what kind of work ethic I needed to have in terms of like pursuing my dream. And I wanted to be a doctor because I went to a gynecologist one time and she was the first black doctor I'd ever seen, and it was kind of really inspiring, and it just made me reflect and think that I haven't had very many black doctors and I want to be the same role model to another girl as she was to me. So biochemistry is my road to being a doctor. So I actually kind of struggle with explaining my identity to people. So I come from a mother who is half black and half Thai, and then my dad is full black. But I was raised in a really Asian community, so like my Thai culture is really present, as well as not from, like when you look at me at first, I'm obviously African American and I'm very proud to be African American and I embrace all that culture. But there's another culture that comes with me, which is also my Asian culture, and it's kind of hard to like navigate both of those and explain both of those, especially being here because it's a very not diverse school, and I don't think very many people have come in contact with people who are biracially Asian and black. And then also being a woman, especially being a female athlete, is huge because especially in soccer, we're all about representation, having equality, and I just think that's something that I get to face and embrace every day. I absolutely do not think there's enough black staff at the UL. There's not enough representation in a wide range of classes. So the only 2 black professors I had was in ethnic studies, and they were both, one of them was African American studies and one was just ethnic studies 101. And it's just all my other classes, I don't see any black professors. And I think this is important for people of color and African Americans to see people who look like them in a range of different specialties, I guess I could say, like specializing in like science, math, or like Spanish or dance, rather than just like knowing about our own culture. And I think it's important to have more professors of color. It's a lot easier for black students who have professors in a wider range of classes to relate to them and to be able to learn and apply the concepts that you're learning in class a little bit better, because you don't feel like you're alone, I guess I could say, because I know sometimes in my classes I'll feel like I'm just like standing out and I'm the only black person in my class. I can't relate to the professor, can't relate to the students. So it'd be a lot easier for the students themselves. To create a broader outreach to African American students and professors, I think the university can do a better job at appealing to a lot of the demands that the Black Student Task Force had. I know there was a list of demands, and some of them were met and a lot of them weren't. And I remember I went over it and there were just some things that I was just like disgusted by. Like there's a building named after a slave owner and we haven't done much for that. Have our own space, especially because this is such a predominantly white school and you can kind of get overwhelmed, especially transitioning from where you're originally from. So I guess having a known community where people of color can feel like they belong is a really good start. And then like being a black student in class, sometimes the only name the professor knows in class is my name. And like I feel like I'm literally just a highlight, like a dot. If I'm not in class, they know I'm not in class. So I can't ever miss class. And when I am in class, I'm the only name that the professor knows. It's weird. It feels like othering, and it feels like I have like a target on my back, and like there's so many expectations placed on me before I even have the opportunity to make a name for myself. Yeah, That's why sometimes it's nice to just take off all my gear. Like before this, I was wearing all gear and I ran home to change. And like sometimes just like leave home without the backpack just so I don't already have these labels on me. But even just being a black student on campus, I'm pretty sure everyone just assumes I'm an athlete anyways.
My name is Imani Dorsey. I'm an ethnic studies major with a legal studies minor. Naturally, I've always kind of gravitated towards leadership positions. Here at the U of O, it's kind of different. A lot of the professors I've had, obviously, are not black people because it's like something I expected coming here. But when I did have black professors, both of them were under the ethnic studies major. And so that meant a lot to me because, I mean, you never really know the significance of a black teacher until you get one. And that's how I entered my education. So when I was in first grade, I had a black teacher and her name was Miss LeMay. And she, like at that point in time, I wasn't necessarily thinking about like my race or anything like that, but she took me and like 3 other black kids in my class under her wing and just like made us feel special and like just made like our classroom environment like really homey, a place where we could feel comfortable going to and like learning freely. Like there was no pressures. Like it was like completely free for learning, and I just felt like it was a space where I could like explore myself. I could explore like my friendships naturally. Just things happen organically, and I think that was because she kind of protected me in a sense. And so when I came to college, you know, I was like, this is a violent place. And so I myself always like, you know, put up a shell. But then once I had my black professors, so Dr. Cheney and then Dr. Roach, specifically Dr. Roach, I like finally remembered what it was like to have someone protect me and my learning, which is like crazy because you come here and it's like, you're always like you're hyper vigilant, you're on your toes, you're just like trying to survive to make sure like you get what you need. When I had my like black professors, they kind of like set me back on my course of like why I was here and why I was studying what I was studying. It's like I'm here for like community. I'm here to protect the people who are also like me and enduring the same struggle. I mean, I specifically went into ethnic studies to like try to mitigate the like degree of onliness that I was feeling at the university. Originally, when I came to the U of O, I was a pre-international studies major, which was interesting. It's just too big for me. So then I moved to political science, and then that was missing kind of a racial component that I was looking for. So a lot of people recommended ethnic studies to me because that's kind of the like lens that I was operating with and doing all my assignments with in political science. And so in combination with the work that I was doing like advocacy-wise on our campus and like at the state level, it just made sense for me to be an ethnic studies major. And I love it because I can study race and power and history and like freedom, things like that.